Hi everybody, I'm Bob Anderson of Bob Anderson Art, and I'm back to continue explaining to you how I'm painting this painting, which is to match this 8x10 photograph that I had printed of a beautiful, beautiful scene that I want to reproduce. Okay, so the last time we spoke, I was filling in this green area down here on the left-hand side of the photograph here. This green area along the bank of the river. And what I told you was first I based it out with like a brown, and then because there's always brown underneath the grass, then I started putting the greens on top. And lighter and lighter greens. I put the outcropping of rock, which is here in the painting, and I put it here just like it's in the painting, a long kind of creamy looking rock, and then there's like a darker crevice right above it. I put that in, and then I put the light creamy shaped rock like it is in the photograph here, and then I put highlights like they appear on the photograph of the little lighter parts of the rock. The light camel colors and cream colors, which have light in them, which are bouncing on the higher part of the rocks. So I put the lighter colors in here and put little highlights as they appear in the photograph on the lighter parts of the rocks. So even the lighter parts of the rocks have highlights on them, and little shadows tucked here and there, and shadows tucked down in the crevice, darker brown, blackish shadows tucked down in here. And then there was another outcropping right here, which I went ahead and I put, black underneath it. And then I put the browns and the camels and all of these colors in to kind of mimic the way it is in the photograph. The higher edges and the flat areas that are reflecting the sun from the sun. So reflecting the light from the sun. And so I'm putting all of this in, little dashes of highlights, little dashes of shadows, and then I worked on the grass. And as you can see, I put more and more green here, and then I went back in and I took a green with even more yellow in it, even more yellow, and maybe a little white, and started putting it back here to create like the different values of light that are reflecting off the grass. And that helps to give it that real alive look that you want, well, I want when I'm doing this painting. So I'm putting all these light greens in here on the grass where the light is hitting them. And you want to keep referring back to your photograph and the grid, the area on the grid that it appears, so that you know that you're in the right area. Although now I can kind of tell because I filled the whole thing in. The basic shapes of the grass and the river. So I'm putting these little bright dashes and lines of color of this lighter yellowy green in here, because these are the areas where the light is reflecting off of the grass. Okay, then if you notice right here in the photograph, there's a darker bluish green shadow right through here. So I went and put that in. I put like a bluer green. And I put it in the shadow there. And sometimes I have to mix a little blue in there, maybe a little brown, maybe a little black. And to kind of get it to look like that same color that's creating this deeper bluish, greenish, darker shadow right there, okay? Then I'm coming down here, and you see it's down in here too. There's actually a dark brown, black kind of pit area that I put down in here. And then the green grass is right below it. So I'm gonna put more of this yellowy, sunlit grass. Reflections of the grass in here, okay? Then it becomes real bright green all around in here, all around this rock cropping. I have the bright sun-drenched green. So I'm just putting that in, little splashes of color, little lines, little dots, whatever I feel like doing. That I feel that is going to make it represent the feeling of the photograph that I'm copying. So, and some of this green comes down here, and then there's another deep, darker, greenish, bluish shadow right down in here, which I put in the darker greens first, and then I'm building up with the lighter greens. Then the light greens come rolling down this part of the grass as well. So I'm putting those in down here. And then there's some little lighter greens right here. But basically the edge of the bank, as it rolls over, it's in shadow. And the grass down here is the bluer and the darker and the browner greens, which I'm putting in down here. So I put like a little brown in there, a little black in the green to get that same color, because I want it to look as closely as possible to the photograph. So down here are the darker greens, just like it is in the photograph. So with some actual, like, looks like almost black right here, dark blackish, where the grass is in shadow, is in really dark shadow there. Okay. Then I moved on and I put more of the river in. And as you notice, when you look at this river, there's all kinds of colors in here. I mean, this is amazing. Look at this river. Back here, there's all this white going across the river, which are probably from the white foam of water bouncing over the rocks that are up near the surface of the river, near the surface of the water. So it's the water is bouncing over the rocks, and it's like foamy and white and bubbly, because that's how that happens. So I put in this white ridge, this white line right across here, right where it belongs on the grid. My grid has kind of disappeared here because I basically filled in the painting. So your lines will begin to disappear because I filled it in. So now I can just look at the image and kind of find where I'm supposed to be. So I put this light line in, light whitish blue line in, and then I started putting, a little darker color down in there. There's another white little run here of water right here, right by this rock, which is kind of sticking out of the water here. And there's a little whiter, bluish white right here on that side of the rock. And then I noticed that right here was another very foamy white part of the river. In between, there's all these different variations of blue, grayish blue, almost a purpley blue, and that are in this part of the river. And then below that are more of these foamy white ripples, which I'm painting in now. Just going right across. It's really white right here, and then it's foam, kind of like a whiter color across here, going down here, drifting a little bit down as it crosses the river. So what we're doing is putting layers and layers of these colors on the river to create the depth and to create the look of movement and flow of the river, because all the colors change in the water. The water, of course, basically is reflecting the sky. That's why it's blue, because water itself is clear or murky, but it's reflecting the bluish sky, the atmosphere. That's why in this picture, the river looks so blue, because it's reflecting that beautiful blue sky. So I'm just kind of working this area right here and adding the lighter part that's running across the river right from the bank right here. And then there's this big wash of, this fluffy white water running over the rocks down here. So I'm putting this in. This is almost totally white right here. So I want to put that in the right position on the painting, where it is corresponding to the area on the photograph. And just mimicking the way the water acts in the photograph. Then I noticed there's almost some little ripples over here. So what I also did in between the last video is I started putting in, there's a whole collection, a whole depository of rocks that are right here rolling down this side of the river. So I went and I put the brownish, beigeish, taupey rock color in, just like it is in the position. And then I went in and I started putting highlights on the rocks. So I mixed white and a little yellow in, because that is creating the color that it looks like the rocks are creating where the sunlight's hitting them. And the sunlight's creating the highlight on the rocks. So I'm putting the light color on the rocks here to give them the punch that the sun's giving them in the photograph. Oops. So as I said, I created, kind of put in the background for this rock collection here as it appears in the photograph. And then first I used the darker color, now I'm putting the lighter and then the highlights in. And then I'm going back to the other side of the river over here where there's like some grayish colors, where between the bank, the green bank over here, and this collection of rocks, it's kind of like foamy again, grayish white ripples of water. So I'm putting them all in. Because when light reflects off of water, it does all kinds of crazy stuff. And that's what you want to get into your painting if you're doing what I'm doing, which is to reproduce this photograph. Then I noticed that there's a little whiter kind of line of foamy white water right across the top of that to give that the ripple of water a highlight. Then I can put little dashes of white where the foamy water is white and splashing over the rocks over here. I'm putting that all in according to where it is in the photograph and in the correct area on my painting. And then I moved on a little further and I started putting in that right here. It seems like there's a bunch of there's a lot of darker grayish, greenish, bluish lines in the water right here as it's being thrashed about in the rocks. Now it's not so much white here. It's like darker colors. You can see the darker part of the water being tossed about in between the lighter ripples of water. So I'm putting those in. I put the darker, grayish little ripples in. I hope you can see what I'm doing. So I'm recreating this rippled, deeper water, more, it looks like it's really churning, but not at the surface creating white bubbles. It's churning and going over rocks, and you can see the darker areas in the water. Maybe there are rocks underneath the surface. It's just the way the water looks down here. So we got some real turbulent, darker lines of movement in the water, which I'm putting in down here.